galaxy throughout the solar system and extending to interstellar regions beyond. This is The Kevin Smith Show.
Comments and views expressed on The Kevin Smith Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the views of Kevin Smith, The Kevin Smith Show, or its affiliates or sponsors.
Hi folks, and welcome to the Kevin Smith Show, whoever you are, wherever you happen to be, all around this gorgeous place we call Earth. Thanks for being here at the Kevin Smith Show. I know you could be doing a lot of other things, but you chose to be here, and I appreciate it. I'm here because you have a right to know, and because you matter. Because you matter, we publish the K-Files. It's our free newsletter, and I invite you to, if you're not already getting the K-Files, go over to my website at kevinsmithshow.com and subscribe. All you have to do is just click on that big word right in the middle of your screen that says K-Files, and then subscribe. You're automatically going to get an email that has a link in it, and you have to click the link in order to activate your subscription. Now, that's the way we make sure that we are not spamming anyone. That's the way we make sure that people's subscription was really them subscribing, okay? So go over there and do that. It's absolutely free. It's a good publication, and comes out every other week. We just sent one out, so every other week, all right? Won't be one this Friday, but the next Friday there will be. The first weekend of each month, I am in the chat room on Saturday night, and I shall be in the chat room on Saturday night, this coming Saturday night. I invite you to join me there. Hope you will. Now, today, here in the United States is a big day, you know. It's July the 4th, and that is our day that we celebrate our independence. Most people talk about how they're going to celebrate July the 4th, but the actual name of the day, the holiday, is Independence Day. Big day here. It is the United States of America birthday, if you will. And in a way that's true, and in a way it's not. We had 6 governments before we had this one, this form of government. No, we had 2. We had 2. We had 6 presidents before we had George Washington. Did you know that? Well, there's you a good July the 4th factoid. We had a bunch of presidents before we had George Washington. He is not the first president of the United States. He is the first president of the Republic of the United States of America. And if you think, some of you are raising your eyebrows and saying, that can't be. I always heard George Washington was our first president. Okay, well then you always heard wrong. Go check it out, and you'll discover that's true. You'll also discover there was no Washington, D.C. in the beginning. And that was a later development. All right, now we are going to celebrate in a couple of different ways here tonight. I'm going to keep it rather mild because not everyone in our audience lives in the United States of America, and really they don't care that much about, our big holiday. So, but we're going to celebrate a little bit. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this.
All of the music used here at the Kevin Smith Show is from independent artists. Most of it from independent artists at musicalley.com. Go over to musicalley.com. Check out thousands of artists and thousands of great independent tunes. musicalley.com.
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I told you we'd celebrate a little bit. Our national anthem and our Pledge of Allegiance, something a lot of school kids never hear anymore in this country. In an email, someone says to me, what were the reasons? No, not what were the reasons. The reasons for the Revolutionary War. That's our War of Independence. And then it says this: crushing national debt, total surveillance, warrantless searches, threat of arrest without charges, or a right of defense. But I digress. Let's not talk about current events. Let's talk about the reasons for the Revolutionary War. Pretty sad, isn't it? Because as long as you have crushing debt, total surveillance, warrantless searches, threat of arrest without charges, or a right of defense, you are the subject of a tyrant, and you're no longer free. But the dream of freedom has never died. It has been hijacked, but it has never died. Tonight, I celebrate, and I hope you will with me, that dream of freedom. And in doing that, we're going. I'm going to do a couple of things. We're going to go back beyond the United States of America. We're going to go back to. We're going to start back before there was a United States of America, and then we'll come forward with some stories that are in our genre, and I think you'll enjoy that. Then I'm going to open up the telephone lines and invite you to join the conversation. And I'm interested in hearing how have you celebrated July the 4th? what is it about America that you love? There are things about America I absolutely adore. I mean, that's a fact. Current situation ain't even America. But there are things about the United States of America that I adore, and I celebrate today the birthday of the real United States of America. And I think that's where almost all Americans are. If you look at the approval rating of Congress, you can see that Americans are definitely not with them. As a matter of fact, it's the other way around. Congress is not with and apparently not for America. But anyway, I celebrate the birth of the dream of liberty and justice for all, and the dream of a Bill of Rights and a Constitution that governed everyone from the president to the lowest part of the economic system. Governed everybody. And everybody had equal rights. That's what I celebrate. And the dream lives on. And so I can say, happy birthday, America. But we begin way back before there was a United States of America. Back in the, let me tell you what we're going to begin with. We're going to begin with the very first officially reported sighting of a UFO. Now, I've talked about this on the air before. I think some folks know about it. You heard the show, so you know about that. But you may not know, the details. The very first reported UFO in America. Well, first, before I do that, let me say this about our approach to this tonight. I talk about us being Homo terra-centric as we look at the universe, and that is man, Earth-centered view of the universe. That's the way we look at it. But down here on Earth, looking at things on Earth, we all tend to be cultural-centric. For instance, when we think about, what was the first time this happened? We start counting from the time folks like us either arrived in the area or were in power. You see that with the Chinese. You see that with Asia, all of Asia. You see it in the Middle East. And you see it with the European nations. And you see it very graphically over here in the Americas. Because you may realize, and I hope you do, that when Europeans showed up over here and said they discovered America, it was a new world, that was big news to all those native people who had been living over here for, like thousands of years. There were cities over here bigger than anything in Europe. Down in South America, you had cities bigger than anything in Europe. We're not talking about mud brick huts either. Okay, we're talking about really well-engineered cities with art and libraries and schools and modern drainage and plumbing, and that was all going on over here long before any Europeans showed up over here. So we tend to be sort of cultural centric. And over here in America, you know, when we say, well, what was the first time this happened? Frankly, we're talking cultural centric. We're talking about after white guys showed up. All right? Now, one of the reasons for that is because when the white guys showed up, they didn't consider the native people to be advanced. They didn't consider them to be educated. They did not consider them to be at the same level of humanity. And that's really, really a shame. And because of that, written records were very often destroyed, piled up, and burned. Why, these are pagan heathens. They're barbarians. We're going to destroy their stuff. And so we barbarically destroyed their stuff, and in many cases slaughtered them. So the written records we have are the ones that the white guys started keeping. So that's an unfortunate thing. But we have to work with what we have, and that's what we have. And so when was the first UFO reported? Well, it was reported long before there was a United States of America. By the time there was a Declaration of Independence, you had cities of Europeans that were here in America that had been here for 200 or 300 years. You know, the families had been here in some cases, you know, for 200 or 300 years by the time there was a Declaration of Independence. My own family arrived here in 1607. 1607. And the first UFO sighting took place in either 1638 or 1639. And these were, the sighting was reported to the governor of Massachusetts. And Massachusetts, of course, was one of the colonies. It was not a state, it was one of the colonies. There were no states. So in 1638, a little more than 100 years before the Declaration of Independence, the very first UFO sighting was reported and was recorded by the governor of Massachusetts. His name was Winthrop. He was the governor of Massachusetts Bay Colony. And it was brought to his attention by the witnesses who wanted to report the strange events to whoever was the top authority in the area, and that would have been Winthrop. He recorded this in his journal. Now, it was in March, but it was either 1638 or 1639. For some reason, that date is unsure. But it is written in the journal. And a guy by the name of James Everell, who was, according to Winthrop, a, quote, sober and discreet man, and two companions boarded a little boat and set out for a trip on the Muddy River in Boston. That's the name of it, the Muddy River in Boston. They'd been moving downstream about a mile when all the mysterious events began. The three men were suddenly confronted with the image, or the appearance, not the image, but the appearance of a huge bright light hovering in the sky. According to these men, the light flamed up as it hovered and appeared to be about 3 yards square, so about 9 feet square. As they watched, the light contracted into the figure of a swine, and moved swift as an arrow in the direction of Charlton. For 2 or 3 hours, the unidentified light moved back and forth in the sky between Everill's location and Charlton. And when the light finally disappeared, the men noticed to their dismay that they had somehow been carried against the tide back to the place where they had started their trip. Now, the governor also noted that, quote, diverse other credible persons saw the same light afterward at about the same place, end quote. So back in 1638, 1639, you have the British governor of a British colony recording in his journal an official report of a UFO sighting. There's been a lot of debate about what they meant when they said it took the shape of a swine. But, I mean, who knows? Maybe it actually took the shape of a swine. Who knows? But whatever that means, they were not the only ones to see it. Others also saw it and gave their reports to the governor. Some of the witnesses said that this light occasionally was seen shooting out flames and sparks. And then this was in 1638 or 9. And then in 1644, there were 2 other incidents where something was seen like that, matching that same description in the Boston area. It's real important, folks. I started out this show talking about something that probably made a lot of my American audience very uneasy, because they don't like to think about the fact that they are not free now. And yet I described for them the circumstances under which we live, and they are the circumstances that caused and brought about the Declaration of Independence and the Revolutionary War. And we are now subjected to those circumstances by people we thought represented us. Makes Americans real uneasy. Don't like to admit it. They'd rather keep saying, well, at least I'm still free. No, you are not. However, it makes you real uneasy when I talk about that, right? They were freer then than you are now. Go report a UFO to your governor in your state and find out. At least this governor, the king's man, appointed by the king, at least he took seriously this report and he wrote it down. He checked for other witnesses. He got their testimonies, and he says they were credible persons. At least he had a regard for the people that said, you know what, these are sober, rational, discreet, credible people. Maybe went through the whole thing and said, you know what, I really don't understand this. But these people are saying it, so I'm going to report it. I'm going to write it down. Try that now. You see a UFO, call up the governor's mansion and say, I would like to speak with the governor. And if you ever get to speak with him, report a UFO and see what happens. At best, nothing will happen, and it'll just be laughed off and not reported. At worst, they may come pick you up and have you committed and have you examined to see if you have lost your mind. So as bad as it is, as bad as it was, in some ways they were more free then than you are now. The first report of a UFO in America was more than 100 years pardon me, more than 100 years prior to the Declaration of Independence and the Revolutionary War. And it was taken seriously. And that's, I think it's real important. Sometimes people ask, well, what's the big deal? Why are you so interested in UFOs? And, why is all that important? It's just a hobby. No, because from way back then, you see, this whole UFO thing and the way it gets treated is like a barometer for a lot of other things happening in our society and in our culture. And whenever they decided that they were going to shut it all up and make it all just disappear by ridiculing people and giving you bogus, nasty idiot stories to cover it up. When they started doing that, they were making you less free. And a whole lot of this less free thing that we are all living through while they lie to us and tell us they're keeping us free revolves around UFOs. It revolves around it either directly or indirectly. The machinery of the secrecy is being used in everything now. All right, we're going to take a break, and we'll be back right after this. Welcome back to our July the 4th broadcast. We've just been talking about this first official report of a UFO in America, in the Americas. As far as we know, that's it. I said that unfortunately we tend to date things and we see things cultural centric. Obviously, if you had native people around for thousands of years here, living, some of them as nomads, some of them in villages, some of them in cities, well educated as well, with art and music, libraries, I mean, you know, that was mainly South America. But I mean, in North America, you did have towns and cities and large villages, as well as the nomadic tribes as well. And so if you had that for thousands of years before the white guys showed up, it's quite obvious they would have seen some of these things too. We just don't have the records. That's the problem. And in many cases, we don't have the records because the white guys burned them. Destroyed them. All right, I want to go to another thing that's in our genre, and again, it is cultural centric, the reporting of it, but the very first reported sighting of a Sasquatch. You know what a Sasquatch is, right? Sasquatch is also here in America known as Bigfoot. And so let's take a look at the very first report of somebody seeing one of those. It actually happened in Canada in 1884. And I believe that's right. Let me make sure that's correct. Nope, 1811. And this is the first sighting of a Sasquatch by a white man. And you know, Sasquatch means hairy giant in the Indian language from which that word comes. It means hairy giant. And so that was in 1811. In 1884, the Daily Colonist of Victoria, British Columbia, told of the capture of a Sasquatch. However, I think that turns out to be not accurate because what they describe really sounds more like a chimpanzee. It was a little short guy, about 4 feet tall. So that would not have been a Sasquatch. Sasquatch means hairy giant, not hairy midget. And so 1811 is the first report of a white guy seeing Sasquatch over here in the Americas. It was not until 1924 that we start having reports of them in the United States, the area that today, and In 1924 it was, and today is, called the United States of America. And this was up around Mount St. Helens, Washington. That's where the first one happened. Later that year there was another sighting, and also in that same area. It was the story says that there were some miners in the area, like gold miners or maybe some kind of mining going on. Anyway, they spotted a Bigfoot and shot at it. Apparently, they killed the animal. That night, their cabin was surrounded by the creature's friends, and all these other Sasquatch showed up and proceeded to throw stones at the building. And they pounded on the walls and climbed on the roof. And this attack against the cabin continued until dawn. The next day, the miners packed up and abandoned the mine. Now, this place today is called Ape Canyon. Years later, a miner came forward swearing that he had been the one throwing the rocks at the cabin as a joke. But you see, the problem with that is the full report. One guy can't surround the cabin, and one man beating on the cabin walls and climbing on the roof will still sound like one person doing it. And so I think that miner's story is bogus. The miners who experienced this said they were surrounded, and they were throwing stones all over the cabin. These Sasquatch were beating on the walls all around the cabin. They were climbing all over the roof. One guy doing that will still sound like one guy doing it. So I take their word over one guy's word. You might have, it's a group of miners. I don't know how many were involved, but let's say you have 3 or 4. There could have been more, but 3 or 4 miners. You might have one guy in that group that has an overactive imagination, and he's imagining that they're surrounded and all that. But you're not going to have the whole group do that. And if it's just one guy beating on a wall and throwing a rock, at best he can throw 2 rocks at a time, one in each hand. And it's just not going to sound like they're surrounded by a bunch of them. And so you wouldn't have all the group of miners that would all hallucinate the same thing. It just wouldn't be normal, natural, probable, logical. It just wouldn't happen. You might have one that would do it, but you wouldn't have the whole group. So I take their story to be accurate. And then later in 1924, also in that same area, a prospector made a report to a forest ranger that he had been awakened in the middle of the night with stones thrown at his cabin. When he peeked outside, he saw Sasquatches, and they were screaming like a bunch of apes, he said. The man laid under his bed till morning came, and then when he went outside, he found the cabin surrounded by huge footprints. So that was in 1924. The story of Sasquatch predates the white guys. As far as we know, the very first sighting in the Americas, officially reported, happened in Canada, which is America. And it happened in 1811. But again, you see, the native people, the people who were already here when the white guys first showed up, they had stories about all of these Sasquatches, these Bigfoot. They had stories about them that dated way back in their history. Way back in their history. And they talked about that they had a lot of problems with them. And there are some of those stories where they talk about how these Sasquatch would sometimes kill some of the people, and so they had a lot of problems with them. There's even at least one native story that talks about them being cannibals, and there was great war between that tribe and the Sasquatch tribe. And I forget where it was. It was somewhere here in North America. And the Indian tribe, or in Canada, it would be called First Nations tribe, finally had fought with them so much the Sasquatch had retreated to a cave. They went to the cave and told them to come out, and they wouldn't come out, so they set a fire in the mouth of the cave and basically suffocated all of them. Now that all went on, you see, before the white guys got here. And our dating of when was the first starts with the first officially reported after the white guys got here, 1811. 1811. But this stuff's been going on way, 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 way back. I want to go back to the UFO thing for a moment. There is a point that I failed to make, and I want to make it. We hear people today say, well, UFOs are really, it's just our black projects. There was no U.S. government, and thus no U.S. government black projects in 1638. UFOs are real, and they predate everything that is the United States of America by thousands of years. The reports go way, way back, and even here in the area that is the United States of America, the first official report was in 1638. There were no black projects. There was no U.S. government. There was no U.S. military. There was no NSA, CIA, DEA, DIA, ABC, XYZ, or any of that crap. But there were UFOs. All right, now, with Sasquatch, this goes way, way, way back. There was a time when it was not rare to see Sasquatch. Before the white guys showed up, the Indians would see them frequently, had dealings with them, and I don't mean trade agreements either. I mean, they had battles with them, and it's in their stories. I think it would do us well to stop calling these folklore and legend. It's their history. And, we are the latecomers here. At the very, very best, there may have been some white guys that got here 2,000 years ago. And at that time, the native people had already been here for 17 to 20,000 years. So, we're the latecomers, and that's their history. And I think we would do well to pay attention to their history because they've been here a lot longer than we have. And by paying attention to their history and dropping our cultural-centric view of things, we might find out a great deal more about what's really going on here. We just might. Now, in our current culture, we've got this, there's a whole industry of TV shows that, and documentaries and stuff, where they're asking the question, do they really exist? And they'll talk about believers in Bigfoot say blah, blah, blah. It's not about belief, it's about evidence. lots and lots and lots of evidence. We need to get over it. All right, we're going to take a break, and we will return in just a moment. All right, welcome back to the Kevin Smith Show and our July the 4th broadcast. Happy birthday, America. What we're looking at here tonight, in case you haven't noticed, is that the topics that we discuss on this show have way deep roots in the history of the Americas and in the history of the world. But the handling of those topics, the way those topics get handled, has far-reaching effects that leach out into every area of our society today. So we're going back and taking a look at some of these topics at a time, well, we started before there was a United States, and then that was with the UFO, and then we took a look at Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and how that was handled. That was reported, and it was no big deal. It was just reported, Same with the UFO. But try it now. Try it now. I'm going to show you something in just a minute. You want to see tyranny? It comes from how you handle the uncomfortable topics of the unknown. All right, first ghost. Well, look, again, the native people who were here for thousands of years before the white guys showed up, they had stories of ghosts, that they had seen, they had experienced. That all got relegated to that's just, these barbaric primitives and their superstitions. Let me ask you a question. Everybody in the world knows who Benjamin Franklin is. Would you say that Benjamin Franklin was barbaric? He was a lot of things. It's pretty well established that Benjamin Franklin did like women. Lots and lots of women. He was not. There's a reason why he's called one of the fathers of our country. Okay? In fact, most of those guys, most of them, there's a good reason why they were called fathers of our country. But Benjamin Franklin was a well-educated man. Very well-educated. High in society. Pretty tough guy, too. Had a pretty tough attitude. One of his sons was a British governor of the colony. And his son stayed loyal to the British crown as Benjamin Franklin joined the revolution against the crown. After the Revolutionary War, of course, some of these British guys, some of the British agents and representatives of the king were put into prison. And Ben Franklin's son was put into prison, and I think he was there for about 5 years. Benjamin Franklin never wrote to him, spoke to him, or visited him. As far as he was concerned, you made your choice, boy, live with it. That was his attitude. He's a tough guy. And I don't know that I could have done that. I love my sons, regardless of what they do. If they had to go to prison for something, I would still love them. They would still be my sons, and I would still visit them and talk to them. Ben Franklin didn't. And Ben Franklin, as I said, was very, very educated, very erudite. Now, there's no date that's given for this, but it began happening shortly after the death of Ben Franklin. And the stories are that it just says the beginning of the 19th century, so this would be early in the 1800s. Ben Franklin's ghost was seen near the library of the American Philosophical Society in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and has continued to be seen there off and on down through the years. Not a barbaric savage, but then again, those barbaric savages were not really so barbaric nor so savage. That was our cultural centric view of them. Now, I told you I was going to show you, and I'm going to explain to you how it is that the roots of tyranny really go into how a government handles the uncomfortable topics of the unknown. That's tyranny revolves around that. It grows right out of it. It's how the governments handle the uncomfortable topics of the unknown. I'm going to show you now. You ready? When the Spanish conquistadors got to South America, they found cities that blew their minds away. Bigger than London, bigger than Rome, bigger than Paris. Very, very modern, very educated and erudite people. Now, they were there, the conquistadors were there to claim land and get gold and silver and other precious items for their king back home. That's why they were there. To make it God and country and make everybody feel patriotic about it, they brought along missionaries. These missionaries, of course, saw this great development. Now, some of the practices of some of those nations in South America some of those practices were what we would call today barbaric. I mean, they did practice human sacrifice. And we would say, well, that's barbaric. Yeah? But these were not savages. These were not ignorant barbarians. They were well educated. Different education than the Europeans had. In fact, a lot of those conquistadors could not read and write. And these civilizations in South America had vast libraries. What do you suspect these libraries recorded? Well, these are the same civilizations where we have found the artifacts of little tiny gold airplanes. And so modern day engineers took those tiny little models and scaled them up and built them exactly like that, but scaled up. Put a motor on it with a prop to see would it fly, to see if it was aerodynamic. And by golly, it flies. Now, these people, in their records, probably had the exact information for where they got that knowledge. Gone. You know why it's gone? Because the missionaries, in order to steal land and in order to command power and get gold, real nice Christian attitude, had all of the books of these people rounded up, piled up, and burned. And where they had a temple in many places, the missionaries destroyed part of it, rebuilt on top of what was left a church. Vast knowledge that goes back thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of years, destroyed for God and country by people who were cultural centric. I got more to say about that in just a moment. We'll bring it into the modern times. We're going to take a break. We'll be back right after this. There we go. All right, welcome back to the Kevin Smith Show. For those of you joining us just now in this second hour, welcome aboard. I'm delighted you're here. My sincere sympathy for whatever kept you away from the first hour, because you truly have missed universes of information. But I'm glad you're here now. So we're talking about these topics that we talk about on the show night after night after night. But we're talking about our first known reports of these things. A UFO in America. Sasquatch or Bigfoot in America. Ghost, first known reported ghost sighting in America. And then I said I'm going to show you how tyranny, or freedom actually, either one, stems from, its roots are in how governments handle these uncomfortable topics of the unknown. So then I talked about how the conquistadors acted and what they did when they got to South America, and they found highly civilized, beautiful, massive cities bigger than anything in Europe. What they did is they got the priests to declare these people as heathens and pagans and worshippers of the devil. And that gave them the excuse to get rid of the people's libraries. That's their storehouse of knowledge. And they piled up the books and they burned them. They killed the kings. Do you know what else they did? What else they did is, while they were Christianizing these guys at gunpoint, while they're Christianizing them, they're sleeping with as many of the women as they can handle. And they spread disease that wiped out tons and tons of these native people. That's what they did. That's how they Christianized them. They burned their knowledge. They banned their religion. They tore down their temples. They killed their leaders. They had wanton, illicit sex with as many of the women as they could handle, spreading disease and wiping out vast swaths of the population. They stole their gold, they stole their silver, they stole their jade and anything else they could get. That's how they Christianized them. Pretty cool, huh? Would you say that was tyranny? I'd say so. They didn't understand. It was an unknown to them. When they wandered up, when those conquistadors wandered up on these big, magnificent cities, they were in awe. It was a total unknown. And these people talked about gods they didn't know. They talked about beings who came from the sky, but they're beings they didn't know. They obviously had technological abilities beyond what was existing back home in Europe at the time. Quite obviously had it. Nobody in Europe had an airplane. So they obviously had technological knowledge way beyond anything in Europe at the time. But it was all unknown to them, and their response to the unknown was to kill it. And their response after subduing this population, their response to the population was this: you got to be like us, and we are the masters of us. You got to copy us. Now, the handling, you see, the handling of the unknown set us back in our knowledge of our history, set us back in our knowledge of technology by perhaps thousands of years. That's tyranny. Whenever, let's bring it to modern times, whenever a government says, well, we can't manage UFOs, we can't control them, so the people will be scared. They decide for you that you'll be scared, you see. Big mistake to decide that. I'm not scared of much of anything. I am scared of snakes. I got a real healthy respect for snakes. But I'm not scared of much of anything. But they've decided I would be scared and I would panic. So we're not going to let you know anything about UFOs. Okay, so they close that down. Then their next step is, there are no UFOs. They've all been explained away. There are no UFOs. Horsepucky. People are seeing them all over the world still today, and they've been seen way, way back in history. But their next step after that was, well, the things you think are UFOs are really just, government black projects. Again, horsepucky. There was no U.S. government in 1638 when the first official report of a UFO was filed right here in what is today the United States of America. But it's the management of the information. They build a machinery to manage the information since they cannot manage the phenomena. They have no control over Sasquatch. They have no control over ghosts. They have no control over real UFOs. None. So since they can't manage that, they manage the information around it, and they feed you the information they think you should know. And it turns out it's almost entirely lies. That's tyranny. In doing that, they develop the machinery to do that with every aspect of our lives. So that now you have no right to privacy. The Fourth Amendment is dead. They can arrest, I could be arrested right now and disappear, no charges, no lawyer, no trial, I just disappear. And who did that? Your Congress and your president. The ones there right now are the ones that did that. And by even mentioning that, somebody will get a wild hair up his rear and put me on some list. I'm not against America, and I'm not a threat to America. I hope I am a threat to the tyrants. I hope that just by speaking and getting people to think, I am a threat to the tyranny and to the hijackers of this country. I hope so. But I'm not a threat to America. America was built on a dream of freedom, liberty, and justice for all. I am no threat to that. And to that America, I say happy birthday. But you watch how they manage the information since they can't manage the phenomena, because exactly that way is how they manage you. Why is it important for us to continue to look into, to ask questions about, to research and try to get answers for UFOs, Sasquatch, ghosts, ESP, telekinesis? Because knowledge, people say, well, knowledge is power. That's not true. Knowledge is freedom. It's the secrets that are the power over you. Knowledge is freedom. And if there's anything I'm for, it's freedom. Now, one more thing. The conquistadors said to the people You've got to be like us. So you have to adopt our religion. You have to learn our religion. You have to learn our language. Why do you think when you go south of the border, everybody down there is speaking either Spanish or Portuguese? You go south of our border, it's all Spanish or it's Portuguese. And most of those people are not descendants of the Spanish or the Portuguese. So why is that? Because, you see, it's easier to control sameness than it is to control diversity. So here's the last thing in celebration of freedom, liberty, and justice for all. Folks, you can't be free if you don't allow freedom for everybody else. Now think about this. You see, different is not wrong. It's just different. That's all. Different isn't wrong. It's just different. That's all. Good example. Leave the United States. Go to England. In the United States, you were driving on the right side of the road. Do that over there and you'll have a head-on collision. They drive on the left side of the road. So who's right? Neither one, and both. It's just different. It's not wrong, it's just different. That's all. We spell color C-O-L-O-R. They spell it C-O-L-O-U-R. Which one is right and which one is wrong? They're just different, that's all. It's just different. Same with religion. This guy over here wants to be a Christian. That one wants to be a Muslim. That one wants to be a Buddhist. This one over here wants to be Hindu. Which one is right and the other's wrong? They're just different. Different isn't wrong. It's just different. And you have to get to the place where you can accept that fact for everybody. Then that way you are giving freedom and you receive freedom. Freedom flows out of us. Governments come and go, and regardless of the government, you can be free. I am. And you can be. Now, governments try to suppress freedom. When people start opening their minds and thinking this way, governments try to suppress that. And people go to jail and people disappear and all that. But you know what? That's like throwing gasoline on a fire. And when American people start thinking free again and giving freedom to other people, allowing other people to just be what they are, it's okay. Just you be what you are, they be what they be. Bad English, but yeah, good preaching. So it's there that I celebrate America. It's there that America was born. It's there that the dream still lives. And so I can say, happy birthday, America. Now I'm going to open the telephone line now, and I hope that my little demonstration here this evening of however a government treats the very uncomfortable subjects and topics of the unknown, the world of the unknown, the way they treat it will leach out into everything else. And, you know, if the government came out and said, you know what, folks, we don't know what these UFOs are. They're there. We know they're, some of them, intelligently controlled, but we don't know anything else about it, and we can't control them, but they're not hurting us. Do you think people would panic in the street? I don't. I really don't. You think if they came out and said, yeah, we've done a lot of studies into psychic phenomena and telekinesis happens, we don't understand it, but it happens. Nobody's going to panic over that. But it's how a government treats these kinds of things that leaches out. However they approach the unknown, leaches out into every area of your life. It's how the great apes keep you behind their fence. It's how it's done. But freedom, well, that comes when you decide that you're going to search for knowledge. You're going to know things. You are going to discover things. You're going to think about the things they tell you and not just buy it wholesale. When you do that, you start to get free because you start uncovering some of the secrets. You begin to see, even if you know the answer, you know the one that they gave you ain't it. And so that secret no longer has any power over you. And you get more and more free as you do that. However, you also have to accord freedom to everybody else. They can see things the way they want to see them. They can live the way they want to live. When you do that, then you begin eventually to have truly the land of the free. You know, freedom is not given to us by the government. It sometimes has to be protected by the government. And I don't think anybody ever envisioned a time when the government here would actually become the enemy of freedom. But to the extent that they have trampled on our Constitution, and do so even as I speak to you, to that extent they are enemies of freedom. Doesn't matter if they're Democrat or Republican. See, I'm not talking politics here. I don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican, Libertarian, or whoever they are. They trample on the Constitution and disregard it. They're an enemy of freedom. But freedom did not come to us from this government. It is ours because we exist. Think about that. Now, sometimes our very existence has had to be protected by the government. And that's a legitimate function of a government. But taking your freedom is not legitimate. That makes the government illegitimate to the extent they do it. To that extent, they're illegitimate. All right, the telephone is open, 623-444-5889. We can talk about UFOs. We can talk about Sasquatch. We can talk about ghosts. We can talk about ESP, telekinesis, and all that stuff. Or you can call me and tell me, how are you celebrating this 4th of July? Or you can call me and talk to me about your views of freedom. And maybe you think I'm all wet. Maybe you think you are free as a result of all the, the spying and the lying and the decimation of your constitutional rights and so forth. You may think you're still free. Well, call me and tell me that and why. But let's talk about this, all right? 623-444-5889. Now, let's be honest about this. Being July the 4th, the American audience is going to be real small because they're partying. They're partying. A lot of them are out to see tonight. They've gone out to see fireworks. And so they've watched the fireworks show wherever they are. They've just finished watching the fireworks show. And now they're partying and celebrating. And so I'm probably not talking to anywhere near my normal size of American audience. But those who are American, and that includes Canada, a whole lot of what I've talked about here tonight applies in Canada as well. Actually, it applies everywhere, but a whole lot of what I've talked about, very similar things have happened there in Canada. So, if you're in the United States or Canada, and you're one of those people who says, oh, yeah, I'm not going to call. Hey, I need your help tonight. Even if you've never called, I need to hear from you tonight. And let's talk about this. Let's discuss. What do you think about all of this? What do you think about the way I said everything ties, tyranny or freedom is tied right to how governments deal with those unpopular, uncomfortable topics that exist in the world of the strange and unexplained. The telephone number is 623-444-5889, 623-444-5889. And for those who are outside of the USA and outside of Canada, you can either use that phone number or you can use the flash message option on the website. The flash message option, you just go to my website, kevinsmithshow.com. Scroll down, you see the picture about tonight's show? Look right above it. Right above that picture is a link that says flash message. And so you can participate in the show that way. You see, what I've told you here tonight applies all down through history. The way in which governments deal with the uncomfortable subjects of the world of the strange and unexplained, the way they deal with that leaches out into every aspect of that society. And that's how you either get freedom or you get tyranny. Caller, you're live on the Kevin Smith Show. Your first name and from where are you calling?
Kevin, this is Steve from Georgia.
Hi, Steve.
Now, you know I had to chime in on this stuff.
Well, chime away, bro.
All right. Well, I guess to start with, vis-a-vis the 4th of July, I live in Columbus, Georgia. We're right outside the main gate of Fort Benning, the home of the infantry, and also now the home of the armor school, since there's nothing at Fort Knox for armor to defend anymore. Mm-hmm. They've moved the armor school, the tanks and so on. They're all down here on Fort Benning now. And historically, Columbus has been a very red, white, and blue community. There are so many people here who are either retirees from the Army or are veterans. It's always been a big celebration. A lot of red, white, and blue everywhere. A lot of John Philip Sousa marches, big parades, big everything. All the businesses downtown and the malls all over the place are just generally all decorated for 4th of July. It's a huge, huge event, and they have big fireworks celebrations and big parades and the military, Fort Benning presence is felt very strongly as the soldiers march and participate in the parades, and it's a real big flag waving time.
All right, you're going to have to hang on. You got to hang on. We got a break taking over. All right, we'll come back to Steve in just a moment.
Late at night I hear Billy say, lay down low and learn to be still, while his eyes search for him better. Got a broken neck from looking over his shoulder. You are the glue that holds me together. You are the secret that I'll always keep. Red line, crossing me over. Late at night when I hear my sleep. Don't get carried away by the distance. Don't carried away, let us play with your mind. Get so carried away, the fire of the distance left you behind. This scary picture the window paints, invisible words that say it all look through. No rain now can save or soothe me. Sounds like someone that I once knew. Something's waiting on the other side. Something moves like I feel it call. Radio plays that same damn lie. Radio blind. Don't get carried away by the distance. Don't get carried away, let us play with your mind. Get so carried away, fire on the distance. Someday you'll find, yeah. Don't get carried away by the distance. Don't you tell why.
All right, welcome back to the Kevin Smith Show. And on the telephone with me is Steve from Georgia. Steve, had to cut you off. You were telling us that your area there in Georgia is normally decked out in flags and banners and red, white, and blue and fireworks and parades and everything for July the 4th. And I expect you were about to tell us it ain't so this year.
As a matter of fact, Kevin, it is not. And I noticed it on the 2nd, just a couple of days ago. Lori and I were out running errands and doing a lot of shopping, and we had bought some groceries, and we're getting back into the car or into the truck, and I asked Lori. I said, Lori, look around. What's missing? What's missing? And she wasn't real sure what I was getting at. Mm-hmm. And I said, I bet you I could walk up to anybody out here in this parking lot, ask them the same question I just asked you, and they wouldn't know what I'm talking about either. But all the stuff, it just isn't there this year. Mm-hmm. There's no banners, no red, white, and blue matting hanging out, no balloons flying, no, it's just not there this year. There's none of it out there. And that kind of blew my mind a little bit, except that I know that there are technologies out there that can either gin up an idea over a population or that can suppress ideas and suppress emotions. The frequency of telepathy, I think, is anywhere from 6 to 100 hertz. And if you can transmit thoughts or messages or ideas over a medium, an electronic medium in those hertz, that range of 6 to 100 hertz, that you can deliver those messages to people, and they don't even know they're receiving them from an outside source. They'll stay calm in the face of something that should get them all riled up.
But I'll tell you something. I don't think that's the case here. If you took all of that technology away, I think what you've got right now is a population in America just about ready to bust loose with the kind of protests and demonstrations that we saw during the end of the Vietnam era. It's real hard for the average American, very hard for the average American to be proud of Guantanamo prison. It's hard for them to be proud of torture. It's hard for them to be proud of rendition. And it really hit home when they found out that we now have a king who has the authority, the emperor has the authority to point his finger at Steve or Kevin and say, that guy's a threat to national security, have him picked up. Just because we express ideas of freedom. And he can have us picked up, have us disappeared, and nobody ever hears from us again. There is no habeas corpus. There are no formal charges. You have no defense. You just disappear. And once that hit home, that our government that we elected betrayed us and turned us into an empire officially, because we now have a guy with empirical power. And once that hit home, a lot of the patriotism died because they saw the republic died right there.
Well, you know, Kevin, if people are actually thinking those thoughts, you know, if the average man and woman on the street, if that's truly their motivation for not getting behind the 4th of July this year, that's a good thing. You know, that's a hopeful thing to me. You know, and it means that the vast majority of people's minds, at least, they're experiencing just enough cognitive dissonance around what's going on that they have rearranged their priorities to such an extent that the 4th of July, which was a huge deal, suddenly means nothing. Then I find that to be a hopeful thing. That's a good thing. On the other hand, if it's just that they're so easily trainable and so easily led around by the nose, you know, in their thoughts and their emotions and their ideas, that they just, you know, they weren't told that it should be a big idea, then it's not going to be a big idea, you know. I don't watch mainstream media, you know. I don't ever watch network TV or even cable TV. I don't watch any of that stuff. So I don't know if that stuff is being pushed this year or not, or if it's just being completely neglected, you know.
Well, if you
were a lot of people,
if you were in charge of the government's position on this, you would want people to turn out and be patriotic, because that would be a stamp of approval for what you, the government, are doing. And there is no stamp of approval on this government.
Well, then I wish people would change the way they vote and think. I'd like to see more evidence of it. But you know, if as you say that the 4th of July here in Columbus, and I don't know how it's being handled elsewhere. You know, I don't know. You know, what are they doing in San Antonio this year? I don't know.
I can tell you what they're doing in Jackson, Mississippi. Jackson.
Say that again?
I can tell you what they do in Jackson, Mississippi on the 4th of July. They drape the town in black.
Well, now that's another issue. Yeah, that's a huge issue. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and the South is. Yeah. Well, I'm not even going to get into that, you know. But I'm just. I'm kind of glad I am where I am. But
well,
at any rate, Kevin, you know, I spent earlier this evening sitting outside in a public place with a bunch of younger guys, people that are generally around half my age, and we gather together and we talk about these things, these unpopular fringe things, you know, that the government, the media, and everybody else tries to minimize, tries to turn into, you're crazy if you think about these things or take them seriously. You know, well, we talk about these things, and we talk about the mechanism that's used to create the concentration camps of the mind. You know, you just lock things away and lock the people away in your prefabricated opinions, and it makes it easy for the government to do things with people like Wilhelm Reich in the 1950s. You know, there was a man who was into some very unpopular things. He was learning how to handle different types of subtle energy. Orgone energy is what he called it. He wound up being imprisoned. He died in prison. He had all his literature, his notes, confiscated by the federal government and burned. Most of his stuff was burned.
Conquistadors. Conquistadors, man.
Exactly, but they were Americans. You know, it was good old the USA in the 1950s, and Wilhelm Reich's stuff was burned, and he died in prison because of his thoughts, and he had the courage to exercise his thoughts. He was told to stop, and he would not stop. And
it's the land of the free, if we say you can be.
Exactly. So, you know, I go there every chance I get. I explore the fringes, the edges, where that's really where the important stuff is. You know, the frontier is the frontier. And the real frontier these days isn't so much geographic as it is mental, emotional, and spiritual. You know, it's moving into these areas that they try to tell you not to go, and they train you to where, you know, you don't even go there. People by and large don't go there, but there has to be enough of us out there who are willing to engage in thought, engage in conversation with others, and light little brush fires of the mind, you know, in the minds of others, and keep this stuff going. And that's the important thing about this show, Kevin, and one reason why this show is fringe. You know, one reason why, you know, you're not in poverty. Well, you are in poverty. You're not in prison. You know, but you have been put into a concentration camp of the mind. You know, you know the big financial backers and so on. You know, the only reason I think that you're even allowed to continue to do what you do is I think you know they track you.
Sure.
You know they track your broadcasts.
Sure.
You know,
they're listening right now. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they kind of keep their finger on the pulse of what's going on out there, using guys like you, Robert Stanley, you know, Jerry Wills, and some of the others that are out there doing honest reporting, honest exploring, and so on. They want to kind of keep their finger on the pulse of where the fringe people are going and what they're thinking about. But we've still got to do it. We got to keep doing it and keep flying in the face of it.
Yeah.
And you know, that's why I call in here and talk the way I talk about the things I talk about.
Well, we not only have to keep going. Not only do we have to keep going and doing what we're doing, we have to make sure that what we're doing is calling them on the carpet on this stuff. And I mean, it's got to be that intense that what we're revealing is calling them on the carpet and saying, oh, if what you said is true, then this evidence over here could not be true, but this evidence is empirical evidence. And so being empirical evidence, it says that what you just told us is not true. And, you know, we have to call them on the carpet and hold their feet to the fire. And look, I don't want to see the collapse of the United States government. I'm not after that. I don't want to, reveal all the secrets and let everybody know all the secrets. If I even knew all the secrets, I don't know any of the secrets. But if I knew them, I wouldn't be ripping the lid off and sharing all of America's secrets with the world. But I'll tell you what I would do. What I would do is on these uncomfortable subjects, I would have, if I were in charge of the government, because the president is in charge of the government now. I said he has empirical power. I meant imperial power. We have an emperor. And he is the emperor now. He has total power. When he has power over your life and death just on his say-so. That's an emperor's power. And he's got that now. All right. If I were the emperor, I would only be so for 5 minutes or so as I signed all kinds of executive orders and documents to tear that down. And then I would sign orders opening up our information and attitude about these very uncomfortable subjects of the unknown. And because, you see, from that, even if all you could say about something is we don't know, and if that's absolutely the truth and you say we don't know, you say it. Because once you do that with the topics of the unknown and the strange, the phenomena, once you do that there, that whole attitude will leach out into every other area of the government. And
oh, absolutely, Kevin. And you know, it's got to take an immense amount of resources, energy, time, etc., to keep the lid on this stuff. You know, it takes a lot to keep this stuff under wraps and in the dark. You know, if we just stop doing that, it would free up so much. You know, I mean, we could get rid of whole areas of the government that are eating up tax money just to keep things under wraps and keep I mean, this sort of thing, you know, hidden, which is, and it's unnecessary, completely foolish.
Steve, I got to take a break, man. I want to thank you for your call. I do have to move along, but thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right, folks, we will be back right after this break. All right, we are back here at the Kevin Smith Show. This is the Kevin Smith, and on the telephone with me is a caller. So let's go to the phone line. Caller, your first name and from where are you calling?
This is Colin from New York.
Hello, Colin.
Hello, how are you doing today?
Good.
I was calling basically because I love the Sasquatch topic, and you know, I think it's in the bag. So I mean, I can't understand people that. I mean, I know there's no body or anything like this, but there's just too much evidence that says otherwise, and that you know that it's so much truth there. But I had a lucid dream about a Sasquatch, and that was, believe it or not, for me, like one of the more convincing things for me along my years with the interest in this topic. So.
Well, you know, Colin, now there is the report of the DNA testing that was done, and I think it was from like 90 or 120 different samples from different Sasquatch, hair, tissue, you know, and they did DNA, and the DNA test says it is part human and part something else we don't know.
Sure, and then of course the one of the more recent, I suppose, compelling stories that many of the listeners have heard already is also up in Ottawa, the cabin up in Ottawa where they were going up to film a documentary. It was like about 250 miles by plane. Mm-hmm. So the idea of pranksters throwing rocks in the night would be a little far-fetched, and they got tissue there from a spike plate. They put out a spike plate of nails in front of the cabin after it had been messed with, and they supposedly got a sample from that particular expedition, and that was a really compelling story because if you watch that one, there's something that's just so truthful in the terror, in the concern. It's just not acting, you know. It's not
well, I've seen that documentary, and the sample that you're talking about is where a Sasquatch stepped on a plank that had a nail sticking up, and he left blood, right, and tissue.
Right, that's correct. Yeah. That's right, and hair also on a fishing pole, I believe it was. That somebody snagged the hair from him that fell, and they took a hair sample that got snagged on the fishing pole too. So they had that.
Well, I really, you know, I'm very, very serious about this. Ancient people have stories about all this phenomena, and the problem for at one point it was the white guys, but now it's not all white guys. It's people of all colors, but who are now part of what we call westernized or Western culture. The problem is, oh no, well, that's not scientific, and it's not written down in a book somewhere, and they don't have a PhD from Oxford. And so we discount it. But we shouldn't discount it. That's their history.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to talk to you, I'm sorry. But of course you need a repeatable result for something to qualify science, you know, in some degree. We don't have practical experience, you know, of this. You know, there's like it's more dripping in this sort of experience of Sasquatch encounters and such.
Well, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. I'm going to show you my point here. You know who Julius Caesar is?
Yes.
Do you think he really existed?
Of course.
We don't have any DNA. We have no repeatable results. All we have is the history of those people that says he existed. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm talking about. We don't have to have repeatable. We do not have to have repeatable.
I'm sorry. This idea of agreement, though, is a very difficult idea for people to come by. They need to be something. They need their nose stuck in it, basically. Before that's just a Western, basically.
It is
conditioned view, you know, on things. The whole glory show me thing, you know.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem.
But all right.
Here's the problem.
But it's still this truth there. Like you talk about these ancient laws, like and then if you get into the even more esoteric stuff, like these spirit sort of the way the natives talk about animal spirits that rule over things, and there's certainly got to be. It can't just all be a shaman's drug-induced vision, and there's nothing more to it than what he saw. There has, I believe that because of the resonance throughout cultures that got a large area of geography, that there's a certain amount of credibility that just is undeniable, irrefutable.
Yeah, but let me show you something. There's a difference between that and what I'm talking about. Those are the people's religious beliefs. But I'm talking about their historical stories. Now, you know, they see a great light in the sky and it's doing this and that and the other thing. Now, then they may develop some religious beliefs based on that. I'm not talking about the religious beliefs. I'm talking about the story of that thing in the sky, you see. That's their history. And their history should be deemed as accurate for them, for what they experience, as Julius Caesar is for Rome. You see what I'm saying?
And I suppose, yes, I do. And I suppose at some point that this value will come about. I mean, if we take Atlantis, for instance, how Oxford just recently confirmed it as a reality and not purely fantasy, that there is a reality to Atlantis.
Who just confirmed it?
You know, and I think that there will maybe at some point be a different value. I'm sorry.
Colin, who did you say just confirmed it?
Oxford University confirmed this. It was like 2 years ago, I think, or so. They came out with some sort of formal paper, peer-reviewed paper, and in it they basically said the things from Plato, that there was truth in that, and that they believe it to be a truth and not just purely a legend.
Right.
You know.
Well, that's good.
Like Merlin, this sort of thing. There's elements of truth, I believe, in all of these sort of legendary characters and stories. And the way we deal with these fantastic things that we don't have a way to perceive or understand is to maybe make up archetypes and such and ascribe powers and such.
Yeah,
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about the whole thing, but I know there's a lot more happening than I know. All right, there's a lot more true than you or I know. That's certainly going on right now, whether or not we know it. Okay,
absolutely.
So that right there is just a very inclusive idea. It just includes a whole lot right there. You know.
You're right. Listen, I got to run because we're up against the end of the
show. Okay, it was great talking with you, Kevin.
Good
Have a happy 4th, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
All right, bye-bye. Yeah, appreciate the calls, but we're about out of time. See, folks, here in the West, and it's not just us, it's other cultures too, there's the idea that if that's not part of what we have experienced, it's outside our fence, that is mythology, it's legend, it's folklore. Well, some of it is, but a lot of it is history, and history for those people, from those people, is as valid as history from ancient Rome. You have never met Julius Caesar. You have no way of knowing absolutely that the guy existed other than the writings from ancient Rome. Their history, you see. And yet nobody in the West questions that because Rome was part of Western civilization. One of the pillars of the founding of what became Western civilization. So we do ourselves a huge, huge disservice by saying they're different, therefore they're wrong. The fact is, they're not really so different, and they're probably not nearly so wrong as you think they are. Their history is valid and it's valuable. Unfortunately, our ancestors destroyed a lot of the records. All right, that's going to do it. Happy birthday, America. And hope you'll join me in remaining free, folks, by thinking free. My friends call me Steel Eye, my enemies do too, and you may call me whatever you wish to call me. Just keep coming back again and again and again. Until next time, so long, everybody.